Hi, I'm Tom Wells. I lead the security and fintech practice for OnTrack Advisory. That's a global consultancy based in Singapore and also have offices in Silicon Valley. And we're focused on innovation strategy and advanced risk management for banks and payment networks. My background is in the payments industry. I've been working in the space for more than 20 years, dealing a lot with how to make transactions more secure and trustworthy. That includes quite a few years working for Visa and Verifone and PayCycle, which is now part of Intuit, and doing security and product consulting for all kinds of organizations that range from big global banks to early stage startups and also technology vendors who are servicing this industry. There's a big interest in improving transaction security in this part of the world. And banks all across the region are enthusiastic, I'd say, about tokenization becoming available to help secure their credit card and debit card portfolios. They're seeing it as a very viable way to bring the fraud rates down, especially with online transactions, which of course EMV, the other big security play that the industry is rolling out. EMV smart card technology doesn't cover online. So I would say we're going to get close to universal use of tokenization within 45 years, and that will mostly be banks availing themselves of the Visa and MasterCard tokenization services that were rolled out last year. As far as host card emulation, the update is a little slower and I would say a little more cautious here. Banks that are interested in mobile payments are definitely taking a serious look at it as an option. We expect there's some resistance from telcos in some of the Asian countries because host card emulation basically disintermediates mobile networks from controlling mobile payment transaction revenues. So I think you'll see a pretty good uptake though as NFC infrastructure starts to build out. The first countries there are going to be Japan and Korea, which actually have it already. And then the more developed Asian countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and parts of China. Lots of innovation and experimentation going on here. As far as technology providers go, the consumer authentication space is still really, really fragmented. Nobody has settled yet on a standard way to authenticate people. So you have banks trying out different forms of biometrics. Most of it's biometrics, from fingerprint to voice recognition to iris scanning, heartbeat biometrics, which work especially well with wearable devices. And I think what's really going to start consolidating this space is the smartphone vendors. It started already a couple of years ago when Apple started putting their weight behind fingerprint biometrics when they rolled out Touch ID. And then it gained a lot of momentum when it became a full feature of Apple Pay last year. And then now, of course, you have Samsung Pay coming out with something similar, and Fujitsu have one with iris recognition, and on and on. Well, the data theft phenomenon against financial networks goes beyond mobile payments to pretty much all electronic payments. The ones that are based on advanced persistent threats, the account takeover attacks that are based on banking trojans, and the man-in-the-middle attacks that have been taking place on multi-factor authentication processes. The kind of attacks that have gotten so much media coverage in the U.S. are actually going on all over the world, and Asia is not any exception to that. The malware behind those attacks is mostly global. A lot of it's coming out of Eastern Europe. You sometimes get some locally focused malware, so we've seen some of that in South Korea and also China. I think that's maybe because their languages have their own character sets. And in the case of South Korea, they're getting heavily targeted by hackers from up north, from Pyongyang. But really, every country in the region. The big difference is that you don't hear about it. And the main reason for that is that there's a lack of regulation around disclosing data breaches. So there's not one country that has data breach disclosure laws. And only Singapore, where I live, has privacy laws that are anywhere close to being on par with Western countries. So banks that get breached in the US and Europe disclose it because they have to, and not really because they want to. In Asia, they don't have to, and so they don't, and therefore you just don't hear so much. I would just say, most of the things that you see and hear about in the U.S. again are very similar. The world, the whole banking and payments world is running on a handful of vendors' technology platforms. There's about 20 or so vendors that offer the core banking and the core card platforms around the world. And so exploits against those platforms are going to be pretty much the same as you see anywhere else in the world.